very nice. Thank you, Scott, for doing that. That looks nice.
I do like that graphic this year.
Gabe's work.
Looks great.
The little girl in the umbrella for the umbrella parade this year was really cool too.
Yeah, it was adorable.
Is that Allie?
I'm sure. I'll let her know.
Or Lita. Maybe that was Lita.
Lita. What's that?
The graphic for the umbrella parade is a little girl. And
He's just making us feel that it's our kids.
definitely Lita or Allie.
I'm sure.
I thought Layla's daughter looks a lot like Allie.
Does she?
I thought so, yeah. I was like,
I was rushing.
Oh.
I was glad I finally got to meet her. She was adorable, but
Yeah.
didn't even
I
notice.
kind of thought she looked like Allie. She's a little bigger, but I mean, she, yeah.
We are on there, just so you know.
Are we? Yes, we are. Okay. All right. I hereby call the 2,259th meeting of the Milwaukee City Council to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we begin, I'll just note that our mayor is off at the Mayor's Climate Summit Conference in Chicago, and that's why he's not here, and I'm stepping in as the council president. And we will start our agenda. We have a fairly short agenda tonight, and we will start off with proclamation regarding the Christmas ships. So I'd invite Roger Jones to come forward.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and I bring greetings from all the Christmas ships. And I understand that our former president was here a couple years ago, and some people may remember Ron Bielenberg, who is a firefighter who has passed away just this last year of exigent circumstances that surrounded his being president of the Christmas ships and his career as a firefighter. So I will announce, I guess you'll announce yours, and I'll announce that our whole year this year is dedicated to Ron Bielenberg and the fallen firefighters, of which you have some in Milwaukee and many firefighters that are having that problem in their lungs and whatever. But
Wow.
it is a wow, and it was unexpected for us. So we've had a significant change in the last year, but we have over 60 boats in our fleet, and that fleet is undying. This will be our 63rd year of performing. So we're looking forward to your winter solstice to come out and do some pirouettes and tease the kids with our fire engine and many secret surprises and wonderful things that we'll be doing. And I don't know what else you want me to say other than, it's all on the website. We've got it at christmasships.org, and the 19th we'll be here to entertain you in person with a full entourage.
Well, we do have a proclamation which I'll read into the record, but everybody in Milwaukee loves to do the solstice event, which there's the postcard or the artwork for it that we've been doing. But the other thing that we're doing this year that we haven't done before is our city staff pulled together a flyer, because the ships actually come here 6 nights. People are all about the solstice, but they actually come to Milwaukee Bay 6 different times. And so our staff pulled together a flyer, and I unfortunately tore it, but and it lists all the businesses in downtown Milwaukee, the restaurants, the shops, and it highlights which ones are open late. And some of them are staying open late this year, in particular on the nights of the ships, to sort of see if we can build more energy around those other 5 nights other than the solstice that the ships come here. So I'm pretty excited about that myself. And I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to say before I read the proclamation.
No.
Okay.
Always a fun time.
It is always a fun time.
Well, maybe one of these days there'll be a dock and we can actually, I mean, who knows? You guys know how to do things. So if you ever get a dock, we can come in and have some hot chocolate in one of the marvelous businesses. We love to participate wherever we can.
Thank you. Great. So here's the proclamation. Whereas the Christmas Ships Parade is a 63-year-old tradition, and whereas the Christmas ships will sail to destinations on the Columbia and Willamette Rivers between December 1st and December 21st, 2017, and whereas the Christmas ships will sail to Milwaukee Bay on December 6th, 8th, 13th, 15th, 16th, and 20th, 2017, and whereas the City of Milwaukee's Winter Solstice and Christmas Ships viewing event at Milwaukee Bay Park, featuring the Christmas ships' combined Columbia and Willamette fleets as they sail to and from George Rogers Park in Lake Oswego, will be held on Saturday, December 16th, 2017. Now, therefore, I, Lisa Beatty, Council President of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim December 1st through 21st, 2017 as Christmas Ships Days in the Dogwood City of the West.
Outstanding. And on behalf of the over 60 participants that will be plying these rivers in the Willamette and the Columbia, we thank you for your attention and coming out and seeing us. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be doing it.
Well, and we hope that you have a nice, clear year. We know some years you've had debris in the water and had to cancel because of water conditions. It's looking promising.
This looks really good. I looked at the next 7 days, and there's no rain at all.
Yeah.
So if we can avoid that, even it takes a couple days for that rain to actually affect us. So, we might have a Bristol full complement this year.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we will proceed with the Metro Council update from Metro Councilor Carlotta Collette.
Maybe over here. If you want, yeah. I think. So then you just toggle.
Okay.
Metro Councilor and Milwaukee resident for at least a little while longer. And former City Councilor, yeah.
Good evening, councilors. It's such a pleasure to be here. And as you know, this is my last update to the City of Milwaukee. I've lived in my house here in Milwaukee for 25 years, so this is really a huge change for me to be moving to Corvallis. But I wanted to have the opportunity to bring you up to date for the end of the year update, and hopefully early in the spring you will have a new Metro Councilor who will come and introduce his or herself to you. So let's get going. The first thing I wanted to talk to you about is Willamette Falls. We are about to adopt the master plan for the Riverwalk, the public access to Willamette Falls. The Metro Council will be adopting that January 4th. We've had hearings and meetings and public engagement all around the region on this. There's just a ton of support. So I'm really excited that the council will be taking that vote. I will have already resigned, so I won't be at the dais for that, but I will be in the room. I really have to be there for the celebration. So we are also still negotiating with the property owner. We're doing everything we can to keep the project online and on schedule. We actually have the money now for phase 1. We just don't have the signatures we need from the property owner. In the meantime, the West Lynn paper mill also closed, and that provides both a loss of jobs to the city of West Lynn. It was their only industry in the city of West Lynn. And I don't know actually how many jobs were lost, but it's significant. I think it was around 200. But it's also an opportunity to start looking at that whole Willamette Falls area and plan it together. And then finally, the Willamette Locks Commission is being formed, and this is kind of came off the slide here, but the commission will be formed in January. I know that Mayor Russ Axelrod of West Lynn has approached the city of Milwaukee to help to fund some of the work, the ongoing work with that. I would encourage you to contribute if you can. I think they're asking you for like $2,500 a year for 2 years. It's a fairly small contribution. We just had the draft economic benefits analysis, and it could be really significant. It could be a huge win-win for that part of our region. So
we're working to get with Mayor Axelrod to set up a date that he's going to come to us.
Yeah, either end of February or beginning of March.
Yeah, I think his concern is that if we wait that long, the commission will already be meeting, but I understand. He asked me to make this pitch. I gave my West Lynn update last night. So he said, please, please, please. We're also in the midst of one of the major things that Metro does for the region, and that is to do our regional transportation plan. We've been working on this. We do it every 4 years, so we're about to wrap it up. We've been working on this one since 2014, and this is the plan that integrates all the major transportation projects around the region, and all the cities and counties have contributed their list of projects. The Metro staff is reviewing that list along with our advisory committees and folks from local governments. We've held 3 leadership forums already that included city councilors, mayors, county commissioners, members of the business community, and the community representatives, community activists. Our next one will be March 2nd, and I encourage any of you who can to attend. Metro is also in the process of its growth management procedures, and we will have a decision coming up in 2018. You might remember when we settled the last urban growth boundary decision, the mayors got together and asked us to have to start immediately to do another one, that there was some questions about our findings, whatever, but they said, please accelerate the process, give us a new UGB process, and we are doing that, and we intend to complete it next year. In the new approach, the cities really take the lead. If there are cities around the region that anticipate growth, that want to expand their urban growth boundary and can demonstrate to the region that it's a good expansion of the boundary and that there's a need, then that's how we'll approach the next decision. You may remember we also have a new process for interim decisions typically every UGB decision is every 6 years. At the midpoint, we can add up to 1,000 acres to the urban growth boundary if it's needed, and if there are cities that really feel they need to expand. So things have changed a lot in the 10 years I've been at Metro, from starting out with the standard soils only reason for expanding the urban growth boundary to creating urban rural reserves, and now this whole the city's lead approach, I think is a really good progression on how do we deal with planning and urban growth expansion in our region. Metro is also in the process of developing a new plan for the entire region's solid waste system. We have some specific challenges in this one relating, I think, particularly to China and their unwillingness to accept a lot of recyclables. That puts this region, which is probably one of the most recycles the most of any region in the country, puts us at a real disadvantage. And so one of the things we're looking at is, are there other ways that we can be recycling, reusing, buying less to begin with, buying less wrapping and the kinds of things that we normally would throw away. So the plan for how we deal with solid waste region-wide will be a really important one, with, I think, some major innovations in it in this next planning process. We have a number of grants that we've been awarding. We now have the planning grants are now awarded on an annual basis. This year, just recently, we awarded 2 million grants, and of the 2 million, there were actually 3 in District 2, my Metro Council district, 2 that went to Clackamas County and 1 that went to Happy Valley. So of the $2 million in planning grants, this district got 800,000. Yes.
Nice.
A fact I'm really proud of. We're doing some really spot-on good planning in this district and region-wide, but I'm especially proud of our district. And we are also about to start the next cycle of community placemaking grants, which are smaller grants that are designed really around community celebrations, not unlike the solstice or the umbrella parade. Those kinds of locally generated ideas that get the community together, that really draw in the diversity in the community, celebrate the community in ways that are unique to you. So I would encourage you to take a look at the next round of these community placemaking grants. We are in the final stages of wrapping up all the zoo bond projects, and I wanted to put this piece of art up particularly because one of the projects we'll be doing is the Polar Passage, and the artwork we've selected for this location, and I've been on the group that's been judging artists and picking the artists for all the 1% for Arts projects at the zoo. This piece of art really captured all of our hearts and souls, really, but also just our attention, because polar bears, as we all know, are incredibly threatened by climate change. And the artist who created this wanted a polar bear that was not going to be cutesy and chummy, although there are two other pieces to this particular art piece that are much more friendly. This is a message piece, and it really says the ice is melting. The piece is called Melting Bear, and it's really about if we do not take action, polar bears will not reach that next piece of ice. And this piece is about 14 feet tall, so when you stand next to it, you can look it right in the eye. And I think importantly, it's made of aluminum, which is one of the most recycled materials on the planet. Pretty much all the aluminum that is being used now is recycled aluminum. There's almost no so-called virgin aluminum in use. So the artist specifically picked aluminum both because it's shiny and bright and light, but also because it's, again, sends the message about recycling and the plight of these animals. The Polar Passage will not be just a display. It really will be an educational piece that will talk about climate change and the role that each of us can play in slowing down climate change. And then finally, we broke ground this summer for the Oregon Convention Center Hotel, and we are already booking larger conventions and conferences because of the hotel. In West Lynn last night, one of the counselors was instrumental in getting, or actually it's the city manager, I think, was instrumental in getting a larger conference booked here in Portland because of the hotel. So my second vote as a Metro councilor 10 years ago. My first was to enable veterans to get into our facilities free. My second, which was a really easy one, my second one was not so easy, and it was to move forward with the Convention Center Hotel. Of course, the economic collapse happened right after that, and the project was tabled for a long time. So this has been a long time coming. I'm very excited about it. It will grow jobs and the economy in the region significantly. And that's all I had to say today in terms of an update, but I also just wanted to thank you as a citizen of Milwaukee, since this is my last opportunity, to thank you for serving the community. I know roughly how little you make, so I know that you're not doing it for the money. When I was on the city council, it barely paid for coffee. So you really are, you're so important to the city. I think people forget how important the city council and the mayor and the staff are to this city and its livability, and we have a wonderful place. This is the finest city I've lived in. I love Milwaukee. I'm only moving away because my husband's wanted to go back to Corvallis, and I've held him at bay for 20 years, so I finally had to give in. But I just wanted to thank you as a citizen of this city for all of your hard work and your service. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions,
Well, I guess, so the one question you sort of answered is you're resigning before end of the year.
Yes.
It sounds like.
So
your move is imminent.
My move is imminent. The house has sold.
Okay.
And so we are in the process of moving. So my last day on the Metro Council will be January 2nd. We bought the house in Corvallis early in the spring, well, actually closed in June, and we've been working on that house as well as getting the Milwaukee house ready for sale. So It's been a really crazy summer. I look forward to retirement, not just because I won't be dealing with political stress, but because I can finally put my feet up and read a book. I'm so tired. But I want to thank you all for not putting your feet up and reading a book, but continuing to do the great work of the city.
Well, we wanted to thank you, but before we do that, I wanted to just make sure anybody had any actual substantive questions about her presentation that anybody wanted to ask about.
Any questions about the presentation?
I just would,
Okay.
Well, I did want to mention, you brought us this regional snapshot about housing, and since that's our #1 goal, I thought we might just take a minute to talk about this. This as a regional issue and one that we're dealing with very, very much immediately here in Milwaukee. And so I just, would you mind if we just sort of discuss some of these?
I think it's really, and just to say that the snapshot is really, what I've handed out to you is like a snippet of a snapshot. The online information is really amazing. These snapshots, if you go online, there's a significant amount of very detailed local information there. Yeah. So I would really encourage you to go there. Metro has been asked by a number of community members to go out in 2018 for a regional bond to enable us to do some affordable housing. We're still talking about that internally. We haven't made any decisions. It's just one of the things that we're considering. We've been getting a lot of public comment at our Metro Policy Advisory Committee meetings, which the mayor chairs. A lot of people have been coming in and saying they really want a regional perspective on affordable housing, and as a large regional entity, we could have a relatively small tax that, because it's a big entity, we could really be able to put together some serious funding to help with affordable housing. As you see in that kind of blew my mind that the median house price now in this region is over $400,000. Yeah. Rent is unbelievably high. If I hadn't been able to sell my home in Milwaukee, I couldn't afford to live. I couldn't afford to buy a home. So it's a huge crisis. Homelessness is a huge crisis. It's touching all of us. We see it every day. And affordability, building more housing, of various sizes, from tiny houses to the single-family homes. We just need to be building more and finding ways to be able to keep people in their homes. Did you have a question about that, or did you just wanted you to?
I wanted you to talk a little bit about it, because I think that some of the points on here are real reality checks for people who maybe aren't dealing with this issue as closely as we all do, in terms of getting sort of anecdotal evidence of the real problem, when we're hearing from our constituents, and to have, information in one place. And I go to the Metro website and I check out all of these really great articles and the detail that it is provided, and I really appreciate it, because it is a regional issue, even though we're trying to work on some local solutions here. But I think it's just, I really appreciate that you've provided this, and I think it's important for us to just sort of reflect on just how big the problem is, and how bad the problem is, and families becoming homeless, and children becoming homeless in our own school district. This is a real problem that's being faced by Milwaukeeans who've lived here many years longer than I have, are starting to be priced out. And so I appreciate you bringing this to us.
Well, and one of the grants that you saw earlier, one of the Clackamas County grants, was for Hillside, which is right down the street from where I live. Yep. So being able to make better use of that land and build some affordable housing, and probably a range of housing at that pretty big site, I think will be a huge improvement.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any else?
I was just going to comment on what great work the Solid Waste Department is doing at Metro. It's just phenomenal.
Remarkable work. It is. You're absolutely right. One of our shining star departments.
Sounds like you've got job security.
A lot going on.
Yeah, yes. There will always be garbage.
There will always be garbage. Yeah. Well, we, because it's what we do, we have a certificate for you. We also have a card and a little token to send you on your way. And unfortunately, because the mayor's gone, he didn't get to sign this, but he is definitely part of this. It's from all of us. So I guess I'll read this, and then if people have anything they want to add, they can add. The City of Milwaukee recognizes Carlotta Collette for outstanding service to the community and citizens of Milwaukee. Let it be known to all that on this 5th day of December 2017, that the City Council of the City of Milwaukee, a municipal corporation in the county of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, extends its appreciation on behalf of the community to Carlotta Collette upon her impending retirement after 2 decades of service in a variety of roles, including as an officer of the Ardenwald-Johnson Creek Neighborhood District Association, the Milwaukee City Council, and the Metro Council. Councilor Collette has been a tireless advocate for green spaces, environmental quality, and better public infrastructure, among many other things, and her wide-ranging contributions leave Milwaukee and the larger community a better place.
Thank you. Quite sweet. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And we'd like to grab a photo, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, I got it.
If you'd like.
I'm in that camp now.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Deep background.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully this won't be goodbye.
No.
We will see you.
I'm going to continue to make trouble.
Good. Well, we got you a few gift certificates there for Milwaukee businesses, so we thought we'd help
Make you
bring
come
you
back.
back. Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Okay. So, audience participation. Oh, no, we have consent agenda. Sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Consent agenda. I will say there's audience and I have no green slips, but okay. Tonight's consent agenda includes the council minutes of the November 7th, 2017 work and regular sessions, November 14th study session, and November 21st work session. Approval of a fitness wellness incentive for staff. A resolution authorizing the Milwaukee Police Department to move to the Mark 43 records management system. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No.
No.
In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Consent agenda approved.
Congratulations to the police department. Have a great night.
I guess that's why part of the audience was here. Thank you. Audience participation. This is the part of the agenda during which council will hear citizen statements regarding city business. Those wishing to speak must fill out a green speaker card available on the table in the hall and identify agenda item number 4, audience participation. As council has other business items on the agenda, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes each. Because the information provided during public comment may be new to some councilors, the city manager will respond at the next council meeting to those comments that require follow-up. That's okay. Equipment failure. Is there any follow-up from the November 21st, 2017 audience participation?
There's not.
There's none, okay. And I have no green cards from anybody? Okay. So we will move on to the easy stuff. Vera, please come forward. Expedited annexation of 6003 Southeast Firwood Street, file number A2017-005, an ordinance.
Good evening, Council. Vera Colles, planner with the Planning Department, here to present. I have 2 expedited annexations, but we'll start with the first one on Firwood Street. This is the annexation area in red. You see the property in question. The properties that are identified in gray are in the city, and those that are in white are in unincorporated Clackamas County. We've heard comments about these maps, so.
Yes, this one's
today.
Thank you.
Sure. Again, this is an expedited annexation for this property. The purpose of the annexation is to connect to city services. The applicant has paid the reimbursement fee and applicable SDCs for the property in order to connect to sewer. Upon annexation, the city or the property will be in the R7 zone. Comp plan designation will be low density. Current use of the property is, as you see from the photograph, it's a single-family home. Notices were sent to all the surrounding properties as required. City departments, governmental agencies, and districts as required, and no comments were received other than from Clackamas River Water confirming that they would continue to be the water service provider for the property. Staff does not believe there will be any adverse impacts to include this property within the city, so we recommend approval of the annexation. Happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Have none.
And we don't have anyone seeking to testify, so I guess we're ready for a motion.
I'd move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E30AD 05800 and located at 6003 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the city of Milwaukee. That is file A-2017-005.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E30AD 05800 and located at 6003 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the city of Milwaukee, file number A-2017-005. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard? So it passes unanimously. Would the city manager please read the ordinance two times by title only?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E30AD, space 05800, and located at 6003 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the City of Milwaukee, file number A2017005. Again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 1S2E30AD, space 05800, and located at 6003 Southeast Firwood Street into the city limits of the City of Milwaukee, file number A2017005.
Mr. Stoffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Falconer. Council President Beatty.
Aye.
Councilor Parks.
Aye.
Councilor Abma.
Aye.
Ordinance adopted, motion adopted 4-0, ordinance number 2155.
Great. So I don't have to read the rest of that. And we'll move to the second expedited annexation. Would that all things went this fast.
Good evening, members of council. Still Vera Colles, planner with the Planning Department, to present the annexation for 9631 Southeast Wichita Avenue. This map again identifies the property here in red. Again, the properties shaded in gray are in the city limits, and those in white are in unincorporated Clackamas County. This property, again, the purpose of annexation is to connect to city sewer. The applicant has paid the reimbursement fees and applicable SDCs for the property. Upon annexation, the site will be in the R10 zone. Comp plan designation will be low density. The current use of the property is a single-family home. Again, notices were sent to surrounding properties, city departments, and other governmental agencies and districts as required. No comments were received other than from Clackamas River Water, who would again continue to be the water service provider for the property. Staff does not believe there will be any adverse impacts to including this property in the city limits, so we support the annexation. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
No.
Is this, I didn't catch it, and I apologize if it's in the materials. Is this another automatic R10 to R10?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly, yes.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
And once again, I would move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 12E30DA 01500 and located at 9631 Southeast Wichita Avenue into the city limits of the city of Milwaukee. File number A 2017-005.
Second. I have a question, though. Is that the same
That was
file
files.
number? It's a different, should it be a different file number?
The file number is actually 006. So
thank
if you
you.
could please amend that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Number 2017-006.
Thank you.
I still second.
It's been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 12E30DA 01500 and located at 9631 Southeast Wichita Avenue into the city limits of the city of Milwaukee. File number A 2017-006. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Passes unanimously. Ms. Ober, would you please read 2 times by title only?
An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 12E30DA space 01500 and located at 9631 Southeast Wichita Avenue into the city limits of the City of Milwaukee, file number A 2017-006. And again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, annexing a tract of land identified as tax lot 12E30DA space 01500 and located at 9631 Southeast Wichita Avenue into the city limits of the City of Milwaukee, file number A 2017-006.
And Mr. Stauffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Faulkner?
Aye.
Council President Beatty?
Aye.
Councilor Parks?
Aye.
Councilor Abma?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 unanimously. Ordinance number 2156. And I apologize for the file number error. That was the script. That was me. Sorry.
Easy to do.
Easy to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vera.
All right. And we did originally have, I will note, our agenda had a third annexation, which was Elk Rock Island, but that has been postponed till December 19th because the mayor wants to be here for that one. In which case we will now move on to extending the housing emergency. And I'll invite Senior Planner David Levitan to come forward.
All right, thank you, councilors. David Levitan, Senior Planner here with the City of Milwaukee. Just to keep things moving even quicker, I didn't even prepare a PowerPoint presentation, so we're going to rapidly.
Actually, Carlotta brought one.
She did, and that's very, well, we did arrange that, so it actually was very appropriate for her to bring that up because you know, the housing crisis, we were actually, all the planners went to a training on Friday, and one of the speakers said that it's actually not a crisis because it's been building for well over a decade. And so we're at a situation now, and what we faced last year when we decided to declare the housing emergency is that it really did get to the point where everyone in Milwaukee did know someone that had been adversely affected by the housing situation. It kind of had been building kind of a little bit slowly, and all of a sudden it just seemed to hit critical mass. And so back in April of 2016, the council adopted an ordinance granting itself the authority to declare a housing emergency, and then it subsequently adopted a resolution declaring that housing emergency. The way that the ordinance was written is that for the housing emergency lasted for a period of 1 year, at which point it could be extended in 6-month increments. We came back last April and asked the council to adopt a resolution extending it for that 6-month period, which the council did. And then at some point in the fall, I don't know, there was an unidentified planner that might have gone off on jury duty and maybe neglected to really put that on a calendar.
Oh,
and
that
so
public service.
We unfortunately let the housing emergency lapse. It did expire on, I believe, October 18th, and so we are now requesting that the council adopt a resolution reinstating and extending that housing emergency until for a period of 6 months. So that would be until June 5th of 2020. 2018. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to the extension of the declaration of the housing emergency, but I think just based on some of the comments from Councilor Collette and just the fact that the council has adopted housing affordability as their #1 goal for the 2017-2018 biennium, it's really dominating the city's work program, at least within community development. We have a lot of different efforts related to affordable housing, the construction excise tax. I'm going to be coming back next week for a study session discussing a proposed low-income housing property tax exemption. So it's something that is very much on the forefront of our work plan and something that we really look at being able to develop some solutions to at least try to address this problem at the local level. So.
And your staff report indicated that in the spring you'll be coming back with some more data.
We will be, yeah. So we have a housing affordability work group that's been formed. It hasn't met the last couple of months as we've worked on some other items. We actually are just working on finalizing a contract with Portland State to help develop that housing affordability strategy. So we'll be moving forward and having additional meetings and should have some additional data. And as it relates to the next item, which is the resolution maintaining the renter protection measures, we're looking at that group also being able to give us some kind of guidance on some potential alternative data, that will be used as the benchmark for that ordinance, looking at potentially amending that ordinance in the future as well. So.
And Council President Beatty, we are looking at having that document as a draft document before you at the end of February or the beginning of March, and then having it ready for adoption at the end of April.
Great. So I'd forgotten that we have really two resolutions here. So on the first one, on the extending the housing emergency, does anybody have any questions for David? No?
Nope, it's still there.
It's still there. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the resolution extending the declared housing emergency for a period of 6 months pursuant to Ordinance 2117.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution extending the declared housing emergency for a period of 6 months pursuant to Ordinance 2117. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Passes unanimously. And so then we'll go on to the second resolution.
All right. So as I mentioned, the second resolution has to do with the renter protection measures that were established by Ordinance 2118. And those are found in Milwaukee Municipal Code, Section 5.60. Basically what that ordinance did was established a 90-day period for no-cause evictions here in the city of Milwaukee. The state of Oregon's standard notification period for tenants is 30 days. And so we followed Portland's lead back when they did that, I believe in late 2015, early 2016. As part of our declaration of the housing emergency, the council directed us to prepare that ordinance establishing that 90-day period for no-cause evictions. So the way that ordinance is written is that we tied it to the vacancy rate in the metropolitan region. And basically what it said was when that vacancy rate rises above 4%, we need to come back to discuss it. Councilor Abma actually sent out an email yesterday. The way that it's phrased, it's a little bit unclear as far as whether we need to come back for that first time that it crosses that 4% threshold, or whether we need to come back every subsequent time. I think to be careful, we're coming back now that it has for a second time. It basically went above 4%, then it went back down below 4%, and now it's gone back above 4%. I think as far as Milwaukee, I don't really buy that our vacancy rate really is up at that 6% that it is for the region. A lot of that has to do with the kind of new supply that came on in Northwest and Northeast Portland, Lloyd Center, Northwest, some of the other areas that really have had a kind of a glut of high-end product, and that's really had an effect on the region's vacancy rate. But we are back tonight. with the resolution, basically maintaining those renter protection measures. And as I previously mentioned under the last item, is that as part of the housing affordability work group's work program, we are looking at potential ways to kind of change that trigger, that mechanism as far as when we need to re-examine the renter protection measures. I've continued to look around. There isn't a whole lot of great data at the very local Milwaukee level. There is some data that's not quite as strong as at that regional level, but that's some language that I think our group, that housing affordability work group, is going to be looking at. And so we will, as we work through that product, and as the city manager mentioned, that'll be coming in the late winter, early spring. As far as that strategy, we'll come back with some recommendations on the no-cause eviction ordinance. So.
Great. Anybody have any questions? No?
Well, as I said in my email, I think that we're going to have a housing emergency for a while, but some of these protections that we put in, I personally would keep them regardless of what the vacancy rates were. 90 days, I think, is an appropriate amount of advance notice as opposed to 30 days. So there's some things that I wouldn't personally want to reconsider, but, maybe I'm the lone voice on that. And I also, I don't know about tying it to a vacancy rate. I mean, we'll bring it back and we'll talk about when we can do that, or how often we should do that, what data we should look at that is the actual vacancy rate. Because you're right, David, Milwaukee's vacancy rate is not necessarily the region's vacancy rate. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't help us a bit to look at a regional rate if that's not what we're seeing here on the ground locally. And so maybe it's reviewed once a year or something. It has without a tie to the vacancy rate. But so those would be some of my suggestions in the future.
So I think that's something that, just as an annual update on housing issues, that we could basically change the language within that ordinance, that there will be an annual update to the council to discuss it, and not necessarily to either maintain or revoke, just it could be broader, just to check in on general housing issues. And so at that point, the council could direct staff, if they felt that there was a magical solution to the housing crisis, that, we would move forward accordingly. But unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen in the immediate future. So.
And the other question that I had is if you are aware that anyone has invoked any of these protections. Has anyone?
I've had several. I mean, I've had a number, probably about 10 or 12 inquiries from landlords and a couple of questions from tenants. I've always offered them my information and, offered myself as a resource. I haven't had any follow-up where someone has actually been sued, where a landlord has basically either fought this, not given the 90 days. The landlords call because they're trying to be proactive. They would like to understand, Portland's was obviously, kind of the first one and was very much mentioned in the local news. And I think a lot of Milwaukee landlords just wanted to know more. We had done an outreach effort as far as contacting all of the landlords that had business licenses, which are required for multifamily residential buildings. And so I'm not aware of anyone that's actually had to go through the process, and especially through the punitive damages component of the way that the ordinance is written.
Okay, thanks.
I was going to say, I've heard sort of third hand about a couple of cases where landlords have given the 90 days.
90 day?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the resolution maintaining the renter protection measures in MMC 5.60 pursuant to Ordinance 2118.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution maintaining the renter protection measures in MMC 5.60 pursuant to Ordinance 2118. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. None heard. Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay. So, are we good to go? Yep.
Yeah.
All right. We're plugging ahead.
Going.
Vertical Housing Development Zone, VHDZ program. I always get the alphabet mixed up.
The alphabet.
And fee adoption, ordinance and resolution. So we have Amy Koski and Layla Aman from the Economic Development Team.
So while they're pulling this up, I also just wanted to give a shout out to Amy. Going through some of these dialogues with council can be a little intimidating at times, and making sure that we capture all the changes can be really difficult. And I thought she did an exceptional job of sort of coalescing all the pieces that we talked about at the last meeting and infusing those into the ordinance. So I was impressed, and I just wanted to call it out publicly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Amy. We did have some more, unfortunately, today.
Absolutely.
So do we have a,
these are
well, I
good.
mean.
No, it's good. It's just,
Do we have a clean version? Or an integrated version?
I did not, I mean, you have the version that was in the packet.
Yeah.
Excuse me, in the packet, and then I figured there was possibly some additional discussion today. So what we would do is clean it up tomorrow and get that to Scott based on conversation we have tonight.
Just like in the past, I think the last meeting, we'll make a note and they can pass the ordinance with the amendments noted, and then we'll clean it up and get the signature version circulated tomorrow, or when staff has it.
Amy did
Need to read those amendments.
Right.
Language.
Everything would be needed.
Yeah, but just a couple of paragraphs, and it wasn't pulled into a whole. So that was what I was kind of looking for.
The key will be making sure, like Tim just said, all the amendments are noted and read into the record.
Right. Okay, go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
So, Council President Beatty, councilors, I'm Amy Koski, Economic Development Coordinator, and here with me is Layla Aman from with the development. She's our development project manager. So we're here tonight to follow up on some of the changes that we had to the draft ordinance at the November 21st regular session and work session, discussion on fees. And just for the record, this is our newly approved boundary as of October 2017. The state approved this expansion to include our GMU, DMU, and MTSA zone up in the NMIA area, in the industrial area. So we discussed the purpose of the ordinance at the last council session, and the focus of tonight is for staff to address your comments. So I'm just going to go right through the staff report and talk through some of the key issues, highlighting where there's housekeeping issues, but then getting into the details where we need some further discussion. So one of the first things that we did was to modify the language around low-income residential housing to be more consistent with what we have in some of our other policies. It was mentioned to be consistent with the construction excise tax ordinance that was recently adopted. And so we made it consistent to read 80% of the city of Milwaukee's median family income. It was previously 80% of area median income. This makes it a little more local for us to measure that median family income. And then we also defined median family income in the definitions section. So that's a new addition. And that was the same definition that's been used for CET's ordinance as well. This set of items is mostly housekeeping. If you have specific questions, please let me know. Happy to talk about them, but they were fairly straightforward, either an explanation from something we had at the last session or a simple change from 30 days to 45 days. I'm happy to go back to those if we need to. And then numbers 5, 6, and 7 get into a few of the specifics that we've really been talking about. Mainly number 5 is the green building language and how we speak to that in our ordinance regarding certification. So So at the top is what we had previously. We are proposing to change it to all new buildings or major rehabilitations as certified projects of the city are required to meet. And this is new per our email discussion, a green building certification level and associated energy use standards set within the Milwaukee Municipal Code, Title 19, based on the date of land use approval. So the yellow is what we have been emailing and exchanging as of today. Wanted to highlight those changes. Do we want to talk about
some
these?
Some of us have not seen some of these changes until right now. Is
Correct.
That correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be
Thank
new
you,
from the packet. And then number 7 was in the packet where we added on an annual basis, but it was not published a week out. That change didn't get made in the week prior advance notice that went out publicly. So I wanted to note that that's another new addition. I'll just keep going and then we can come back to these. Does that make sense?
Sure, I mean.
Well, I can't see it, though.
The people,
I can't, I'd like to look at it.
you want to?
I'm sorry. Since this is the first time I've seen this or heard about it, I want to be sure I'm getting the full gist of it.
Let me just talk through a little bit of why the change has been made. So it was highlighted to us that it discusses energy efficiency as it was drafted for you to consider. Energy efficiency is actually discussed in the building code, not in the land use code. In the land use code, we have a green building standard. And so it was confusing, especially without what chapter we were referencing as to which program we were referencing. And so for a point of clarity, we wanted to make sure that you knew that this was based on the land use code that says that we do a green building standard that currently says green globes. Council can have a discussion about future things you'd like to have in that code. But right now it's called the green code or green building code. So we wanted to make sure that that was clear, that that's what we were referencing. And then the other piece is that the code is held within Title 19, not within 14, which it could also be presumed to affect. So we wanted to make sure it was very clear that this was about our land use component.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So just to tie this back to the discussion we had last time, this is tying the, this ordinance, the VHDZ to, or did I do it backward?
You did it right.
to our, the standards that we currently have in our zoning, zoning code, which the mayor and maybe others had concerns with or not strenuous enough, right?
Right, but they are what's in the code at this
at
point
the
in
current.
time. And if someone has filed at this point in time or at whatever point in time in the future, then whatever's in the code at that time in the future is what they go by. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. This means, as I take it, if we adopt this, we just have to change it in Title 19. We don't have to come back and change it again here.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And council would need to decide, because I think that Mayor Gamba would like to be a part of that discussion, should that proceed, whether or not you want to change it. The nice thing with the way this is drafted today is this refers back to that code that's in existence. We just wanted to make sure that that was very clear.
Well, which makes sense, just like in the earlier discussion we were having in the work session about things that were tied to a piece of a municipal code or an ORS or whatever, rather than to an actual metric of some kind. Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense to say whatever's in that code at that particular time.
That's the standard. And it's also for us to, for some odd reason, sometimes we miss making changes, right? So we want to make changes to one part of code instead of having to accidentally have two standards in the city, whatever that standard is. So this cleans that up, but it also refers back to that process and allows us to have further discussion.
Unless you wanted different standards.
Unless you want different standards.
Yeah.
And those then would be,
and
but that wasn't what the direction we received at the last meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was trying to find it, and so I fell behind trying to find the question I had, if you don't mind going back to the other change, which is the about the definition. So that, I still have some discomfort around this because we didn't define low-income residential housing in the CET. It's not in the definitions.
In the CET
ordinance. And so
yeah, that's correct. That's where we left it open, just so council remembers that left it open. It was 80% and below.
In the
Come on up.
I can't hear that.
You know you can't do that from back there.
You look great.
Give that girl.
Good evening. Alma Flores, Community Development Director. Yes, it wasn't in the ordinance itself for the construction excise tax that you just passed because it's in the ORS. So the ORS clearly states what we mean by low-income housing, and it's 80%.
And it's the same as...
I channeled that language to Amy so that she used the same language that was in the CET ordinance. Not the ordinance, sorry, the ORS language.
Okay.
I used the CET language, and there was only the definition for median family income.
Right. So
right, but you're talking about the right. No, I don't mean that part. I meant the reference for what is the threshold by which one is classified. Low income.
Well, just because during that discussion, you'll remember we were actually sort of defining it a little bit differently.
Exactly, and that was for workforce housing that we were having those discussions. But in the ORS, it's pretty clear that for the exemptions, if you will, it's stated at 80%.
Okay. All right.
Of area median income.
Okay.
Oh, in our ordinance, we chose to do Milwaukee median family income because to the discussion earlier on vacancy rates regionally, we wanted to make sure that we understood our context in the regional context. We wanted to have it be specifically to Milwaukee, not take regional numbers.
Okay. And something is it critical that we use the term low-income residential housing throughout? Because I wondered, because in light of the conversation we were having about, that range being within workforce housing and also in terms of, within the context of the discussion we were having about who we're hoping to catch with this, I wondered whether or not we might not use low-income residential housing and whether that was critical.
Well, a lot of the state statutes and a lot of the tax incentives, a lot of the programming uses that term.
So to be consistent,
and unless we say it's either rent restricted or it's subsidized housing, those imply different things for different people. So subsidized, for instance, would be at 60% and below, and that was very clearly what housing authorities use when they define the populations that they serve. And so I'm a little worried that if we change the definitions that we cause confusion in the market as to what we're referring to.
Okay. And rent restricted, that also causes you some...
Well, rent restricted, again, it's a form of subsidy, so you're restricting it, and so it is another term that can be interchanged with subsidized housing. So low income, you don't have to be in subsidized housing to be eligible for this credit, or at least this consideration.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So we were here talking about the green building tying to the code, Title 19, and then this addition on the list of requested documentation would be not limited to, including but not limited to rents on an annual basis and lease agreements with redacted personal information. The other, number 6, is something that can be deleted because we are taking out fees related to low-income housing. You'll see that we have the one fee rate. We didn't separate it out per your recommendation last time. So we can remove that from the ordinance. And then
Do you mind if we go back to documentation so I can ask a question? Sorry. We had a little bit of a conversation around decertification and how that might be able to happen, how that could occur if maybe a filter was installed upside down.
In here, I believe.
Is there some other documentation about, or some other area where you're considering adding documentation about continuing certifying or continuing to just certify to the city that you are
meeting the standard.
Continuing to meet the standard.
Yeah, Amy, I don't know if you put it into the presentation today. This is the discussion you and I had this morning about whether or not energy modeling would be something that you would want during the initial application to make sure that they actually would qualify when they first submitted the application. But there was also the discussion of whether or not you want to have an energy program that could do what you just outlined. The way we drafted this was with the intention that if we change that, we said and associated energy use standards, that we could come back if council directed us to create a program like that and that this would apply. Okay. That's why we drafted the language that way. Doesn't mean... Would you like me to respond to that, what I just said?
No, I was just going to ask a question about, well, you finish.
Okay. So the short answer is Portland has a program where you input a building's data into a EPA website. That data has a backside to it that allows for cities to actually go in and extrapolate that data. So you could use that information in order to determine if systems were continuing to function. We don't have a staff person on staff at this time who could do that in a way that really would be qualified. We could pay someone to do it. We could outsource that if we wanted, but that's really a part of that broader conversation, I think, about what the standard is, if you guys want to talk about that. And that's why we tried to morph the language so it would allow it without dictating it.
And I believe this also it was an item we talked about last time, and number 8 is where we added to the list of decertification items if they fail to meet energy efficiency. That was an addition that was asked to be included, so that should help get on it.
Yeah, and that does the initial one. So you won't get the qualification if you didn't get the certification, but it doesn't have an ongoing component. I'm not saying we should. I think that right now we have something in there that allows for us to have the conversation over the next couple months, but.
Does the decertification need to also have the green building language that we're putting in so that it matches, as opposed to saying energy efficiency certification?
Yep.
The language that Amy updated, shouldn't it also be in the decertification?
Yeah. Redlined it. So you would drop energy efficiency, and at this time it would just be whether or not it meets
the green building certification
level outlined in there. And the code actually references that, and there's language in the code that requires that they meet that in order to get the bonus, because the green building is tied to the bonus floor only. Does that address it?
Yep.
Okay.
For me, yeah.
So, and then number 9, we also added to the list to the remedies and decertifications and building energy usage annually to the city, if you see at the end of number 9.
So at least would be disclosed so that we could use it at a future date, if you're interested.
And then number 10, we had included an explanation related to the rent control question and the concern about rent increases. We understand that concern and want to make sure that we're being aware and addressing community gentrification. So there may be other incentives that we could implement through the development of programs to address commercial affordability outside of this project or this program, but that's something that we could discuss further if we think that that's needed. The conversation was around a specific tenant issue that we had heard about, but the explanation is that it's a little bit difficult to put it into this ordinance. However, we could implement some programs to try to help businesses address this if it became, so we can prevent it from becoming an issue in the future.
Or at least we can assist.
Exactly, yeah.
Preventing is outside of our scope.
Yeah, I mean, I think that concern about, was trying to get into how the tax abatement is allocated within a building between the residential and the, and the commercial spaces and all of that. And it seems really dangerous to me to try to interfere in that. Yeah.
And we had a few conversations. They just didn't lead to us feeling like we could do that in a way that was meaningful.
Yeah.
So if we're okay with that, the next piece is the fees. We talked about these last work session as well. And if you decide that this is something that what we're proposing tonight, the revisions that we're proposing tonight is something that we could move forward with. I do have an updated redlined version of the resolution with today's date on it, so I could pass that out. And as we go through the fees, I can distribute that as well. It's here.
That's not the one that's in the packet? You've updated it since then?
Redacted.
Okay.
I saved it so I could easily.
We ended up having a conversation with Clackamas County that gave us a better sense for some of the fees. So that's why we needed to make some amendments.
So Layla will pass that out. Thank you, Layla. And
never mind. You had the original. We just had to change your name.
Was that all that had to be changed?
That's it.
You didn't need a piece of paper for that.
And today's date was the other piece.
Okay.
I was thinking we had to have a second reading on this, so that's why I put December 19th.
Oh, 19th. Okay.
But
Two readings, not two meetings.
yeah. Right. So if that's something we feel like we want to do tonight, or you want to do it tonight, then possibly I have a clean copy for Scott if we need it. But want to walk through the fees. So I think you're aware of what the state was charging for the last 10 to 15 years or longer. They really aren't clear how long those fees have been in place, but it's been quite a while. And council suggested that we have the same fee for residential units, for all residential units, both market rate and low income. And so that's what we're proposing here with just the 0.003 rate of the total permit valuation. We upped the application fee, which is a one-time fee. What we proposed last time was $500. We're saying $1,000 now. That the rate for the processing fee based on the permit valuation. And then the annual monitoring fee, which would be $400 a year for the 10 years. So $4,000 total for a project.
And are all projects going to be subject to a monitoring fee? Or is that just the affordable, the ones that are getting?
Well, because we're talking about affordable, which actually may be a smaller percent. We might not see that many affordable projects, but the energy efficiency piece, helping to cover the costs for both monitoring of both of those pieces.
Okay.
And so what we are trying to do is think of this from a cost recovery standpoint. And so we figured out an average wage of all of the staff that would touch this. And it's around $100 an hour. And so because of the percentage in there, if we look at a $30 million project, we're talking about 139 hours. The total would be around $14,000 for a $3 million project, the fees. And so that's around 139 hours of time, approximately 14 hours a year. We don't have a good sense of if that's still too little or too much, but we do know that the Portland program, they charge a flat $16,000 fee for their multi-program. And last time we talked about a $5 million project, which isn't as realistic for a larger development, but we talked about $15 an hour. We said that was, or 15 hours per project. That was too low, it seemed, and so with this new calculation and the average rate, it would be around 64 hours for a smaller $5 million project if that existed. So it gets scaled based on the size of the project. And this also incorporates, built in here is a fee that we're still kind of working with the county to understand exactly what they would charge, but they have an hourly rate that they charge per unit. We're trying to assess that out with them because we would have already done the upfront collection of information about the per unit, but there would be a fee that we could possibly pay, or the county would charge us a fee if we had them do the low income monitoring. So this would cover all of that.
Just so I'm clear, what you're just now describing is the monitoring fee? Or you're not talking about the application processing fee?
It's everything. All those total hours is basically what we get out of the total amount of the fees.
So help me understand that a little more.
30
annual monitoring, do you know, I mean, do you have an idea of, is that, does that provide for the cost that we would put into it, or would it be a type of burden, or?
Can I give you an example?
Yeah.
So there's a couple things on the annual monitoring fee. There are nonprofits that will go in and data manage our energy code if you guys decide that that's going to be a component of that. We have to pay them, and that would be an annual fee per location that they're trying to monitor for us. We also have affordable housing. There are stipulations that they have to meet. They have to show the income generated by the residents of those locations, and there's a process they have to go through. We don't do that because it's just not what cities typically do. There's typically these programs either at Metro or at the county, though we found out that Metro actually outsources theirs to the county. So we have to, they require staff time to do it, and so this is a way for us to cover that cost. In terms of the application fee, we're going to have to do a bunch of calculating, and if you even just look at what we've been going through as we've talked about our initial expected applicants, there's a bunch of time that staff puts into this, and it's expected that the $1,000 will simply cover the cost of actually going through this process and making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
Yeah. But it will cover our costs. I mean, that's what I'm concerned about.
Oh, okay.
Or the costs of, if we have monitoring and it's $400 a year.
We believe so. I mean, if we hired a staff person as a sustainability person at a future date, and that fee would be paid to us internally, right? We would use that towards their salary. Until that time, should you decide to continue down this path, then it would go towards a nonprofit in town that would realistically look at these numbers for us once a year just to confirm that they're not seeing anything egregious.
Okay. Yeah.
Seems like they would charge more than $400.
Yeah.
That just seems awfully low to me.
It does to me too.
But if you run the numbers and you feel confident, I would feel strongly that we recover our cost on this. And I think if you're giving someone a tax abatement of 10 years, they can pony up a little bit on a monitoring fee to make sure that they qualify.
Well, you want to? I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I guess what I was hearing is that the application processing fee is really also
covering some
going into some of that monitoring, right?
Part of the long range fees?
Wilma.
Okay.
Thank you. Again, you're correct on your evaluation of how the assessment fee and the application fee will be fully captured in sort of that cost recovery model. In terms of the monitoring fee, keep in mind that we're going to be asking the applicants or the applicant to submit an annual report that summarizes what a nonprofit or a third-party entity would do for them in terms of making sure that they're meeting their certification targets and that they're still in compliance. The $400 monitoring fee is mainly for us to spot check and to confirm that, in fact, what they provided in this annual summary report is indeed correct. So this should be a lot more if we're doing that level of work, but we don't have the staff capacity to do that level of monitoring at that fine detail of income certification per tenant. And the county could do that for us, but it's $60 an hour per unit. And if you have a 100-unit project, say, that's $6,000 for that. So the applicant would be expected to pay X amount to a third party to give us an annual summary certification report that we are then saying $400 would be used to then verify that that information is correct.
And how would we verify it?
Well, we would use the county. We would still use the county, but it wouldn't be a per unit. It would be a spot check of the information that we get in totality from the annual report. That's how we envision it.
Okay. Still seems slow to me, but
if
you're covering some of these costs through the application processing fee, you're saying that this is a 10-year project, 10-year abatement. We're going to take a lot of money up front, and then we're going to segregate those funds and then be drawing from them over the 10 years to help pay for this. So I don't understand why we would do that versus having a more substantial yearly monitoring fee that could be changed if necessary to cover costs, which I suppose this one can be changed too. I mean, I don't know. From an administrative standpoint, that seems like you're having to do more work. Mm-hmm. You're taking a lot of money up front, putting it in a fund, and then drawing from it every every year, which seems.
And the application processing fee, to be clear, is mainly for the time that it takes staff to go through the paperwork, because there's quite a bit of compliance paperwork just to get them through the vertical housing tax abatement portion of it. That monitoring fee is mainly applicable if a project is considered low-income housing certified, or it's qualifying under that umbrella of getting the additional 20% plus on the land if it's a low-income housing project. So this monitoring fee does not apply to every single application process. So we didn't want it to be too high where we're saying this is going to apply to all projects. We didn't want it to be too low where we said this isn't important to us.
I understand.
So it was kind of a happy balance medium.
That makes more sense. It doesn't take into account if we're going to do any kind of energy monitoring, though, right? That's going to cost money.
It doesn't.
We couldn't get a cost estimate on that.
I'm just giving her time. No, I mean, I'm concerned about that. So partially just because, I mean, this comes back to our original conversation, right, of where are we going around this program and the amount of time that it's going to take for us to develop something. So when I say I'm concerned about it, what I'm concerned about is what are we talking about? And what is the time frame by which we make that determination? But slowing down this process makes it really difficult for us to do other things that are important to the city. So we can revisit it if you'd like to once we know what that programming is when it comes to the energy specific fee. And I think that's probably important because we just can't give you a great answer today.
So are these fees like part of our master fee schedule?
Yes.
So they get revisited every year anyway?
Yes.
So when somebody applies, they're not being guaranteed that's going to be $400 through the whole 10 years. That annual monitoring fee could go up on them a couple years in or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. Now that makes me more comfortable, I guess. But I'm still not hearing what the difference is in what the application fees going for and the application processing fees going for. Because it sounds like you're saying both of them are going for the initial, the staff time for the initial application.
It happened at two different times, though. So the $1,000 would happen at the time that they've just gotten their land use approvals, or they're about to get their land use approvals and they submit their application for vertical housing. That's $1,000 that they need to pay right there. We would then run through their numbers, make sure that they've calculated things correctly, and we could give them a conditional letter of approval. We could also, in that conditional letter of approval, write in that there's an extra cost that they need to pay some energy nonprofit to review their annual reports. We could write those things in later if we had to, if we find this isn't sufficient. But we give a conditional letter of approval. Then a year, 2 years later, when they've completed construction, they basically reapply. And that's what they pay at the processing fee based on the valuation. Because we then have to review everything.
Re-verify.
And make sure that they did what they said that they would do, and then go check out, the building official would check out the building, but she'll now be also looking at it from this program's perspective, from the energy efficiency piece, to make sure they did what they said they would do, and low income, and then we would possibly need to follow up on that if we found something was missing or not in place.
Okay, so if they paid the processing fee, and then the building official went out and looked and said, no, you don't qualify, that's money that's gone for them, right? Because they don't qualify, but they've paid the fee up front for the review, so it's just out.
Yeah.
And if I was hearing earlier, if I was hearing correctly, we were thinking that some of this pot of money was going to last for 10 years because we were going to use it for some monitoring as well, maybe, right? Or did I misunderstand that? Because if we're front-loading something and then they don't qualify, they've paid for a 10-year monitoring process that's not going to happen, and it seems to me like that may be a lot of money up front. But maybe I'm misunderstanding what you said about the processing fee.
Do we have a reimbursement piece to this? Like if
no, we
like CET?
we didn't do that. Well, I am seeing one thing. This processing fee is collected at the time of final application following certificate of occupancy. So it's a little different from what you stated, that they would pay it and they wouldn't get it back if they didn't.
So I also don't want them to pay, and the city, staff does all this work, and they don't qualify, and then, I don't want to refund it either, but I don't know what 3% of a $30 million value.
It's not 3%. It's
0.003. Anyway, I'm having trouble figuring out what a normal. I won't say normal because there isn't a normal project. But
right. Not yet. Yeah.
What would it be? $9,000. I don't know. Just
we wouldn't.
Maybe I'm.
Well, I guess what's the scenario where somebody gets through the first?
So they'd have to be meeting the requirements to get.
Right. What's the scenario where somebody gets through the first application and we say, yeah, you look like you're going to be eligible, go ahead and build, and they get their money and they build, and then what would make them not eligible that we thought they didn't they didn't satisfy the green energy thing, or that's really mainly it at that point, right?
Yeah.
It would have to be substantial. It would basically have to be the building that's approved through the land use process. So what you're buying at the time of the application is that building, which is why we recommended that it happens at the land use phase, because you're now through design development, you're really far enough along that the number of units, the ground floor, the calculations that go into determining the level of tax abatement are much more clear at that stage. So what you're certifying at the end of it is, did they build what they said they were going to build? And then you're also certifying whether or not that they met the green building requirement at the time of their land use approval. And so there's a certification process that goes on with that. And so if an applicant did not build to that standard and they cannot demonstrate it, then we do not have to authorize the abatement.
And so that's the person that would be paying that processing fee, that extra $9,000 or whatever it ends up being on their building, and who wouldn't be able to go forward in the program. That would really kind of be the only scenario where you would see that we would be turning somebody down at that juncture? Are there other things in there where we would be saying you passed at this juncture, but you're not passing at this juncture?
If the building isn't substantially as it was during the land use process, that would certainly be one. I'm sure there are other, if the building doesn't get built at all, the entitlement wouldn't pass along.
Well, then they wouldn't come and pay the second. They wouldn't have come and paid the second round of fees. So it sounds to me like it's going to be fairly
the other thing
rare, but
might change is just the number of eligible floors. Like, let's say they initially calculated that they were going to get the full 80%, and then they reduced by a floor or something. Then they might not get 80%, but they're going to get 60%. So those are the kinds of changes we might see. We'd still collect all the fees along the way, but we wouldn't necessarily be decertifying them because their project could change.
Right.
Yeah, and if it changed that substantially, it'd be a new application because it'd be a completely different project. If you take a floor away, you would have to reapply. It wouldn't be the same project.
Questions, thoughts?
Yep. I think I finally get it.
I guess.
Can I answer your question that you asked earlier, Councilor Abma, on the cost recovery across the 10 years with the initial application fee and the application processing fee that could be assessed later? It's not set up that way, because monitoring fee is monitoring fee and processing fee is processing fee and application fee is application fee. And for us, we don't normally take a cost recovery approach to most of our programs because we're providing a service that we're trying to incentivize a certain action. And in this particular case, we wanted to have at least some narrative related to where that money would be going toward. And yes, it would be going toward staffing this program, but we might find greater efficiencies in year 4 when we're used to it. And we, initially thought it was going to take 16 hours to complete is now half that time, which means that we could use some of that money. It still goes into the coffers, the general fund, that could be part of that cost recovery model largely over the 10-year period, but it isn't maybe initially, and then it sort of has diminishing returns, if you will, across the 10-year, or in this case, this is a 5-year program for us. It's a 10-year for them, but it's a 5-year for us over the 5-year administration process that we would have.
Why is it a 5-year for us?
Because you asked us to sunset.
Oh, you mean new applications. Oh, yeah.
Monitoring.
Yeah, but the monitoring for those who come in within the 5 years. Yeah.
The processing.
Yeah.
I guess in a very more confusing way I answered this question.
Well, but it seems clear that they're not, if they don't spend all the processing fee, they're not going to create an account and track it against that building or anything. It's just going to go in the general fund. And I guess knowing that, I do kind of share the feeling that the monitoring fee is probably low. But as long as we have the ability to revisit that when we revisit our fee schedules, and when we know more about what kind of monitoring we're going to.
I think we're kind of stabbing in the dark, aren't we?
The concern I would have on it going into the general fund is usually fee-based programs are not money makers. Mm-hmm. They're designed for a cost recovery. So if we're charging someone $9,000 on a building, and it really only takes us $2,000 to actually do the review, and we've made $7,000, I think we're going to have some trouble on that. Is one of my concerns. But I will defer to...
No, that's correct. There's some history in Oregon of litigation over building permit fees that raise exactly that point. We need to be able to at least generally track so that we can show there's a relationship between the cost and the charge.
But could we call it an application processing and monitoring fee, and it's still maybe is a percentage?
Yeah, I think we could do that, and we've had some discussion about this. To the extent we aggregate some of these things, I think we deal with the issue pretty well because we're not required to track each individual permit and its actual costs. We need to, in the aggregate, have a proportional relationship.
For the program itself. Could we get away with doing it as it's suggested, and then the money doesn't go into the general fund, but it stays into this program, so that it is, at least in one area, it's not being used to then to pay for a tree or a park or whatever else?
Yes, we could create a fund that does that.
But that, I don't know.
Like that.
So are you suggesting then somehow merging the monitoring and the processing?
Well, I think you could either merge it or you could do it separate as we have, but I think we need to segregate the fund.
So I guess going back to what Councilor Faulkner just said, I just want to make sure that we don't have duplicate fees. So right now, if you're going to combine them in title, we just need to make sure there's not two monitoring fees somehow.
I think we could keep them separate, but then I just segregate the fund itself, that the money's all going into, the pot of money is going into one fund. It's this program fund, and it's not used to do anything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
I guess, well, okay. I could see some downside to that, I guess, in that, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it is more transparent, so the people who are participating in this program can then see, in our budget, how much is in that account or whatever. But I mean, I don't know.
Do you think it'd be overly restrictive or what?
I don't know. I just feel like it's, well, first off, it might disincentivize us from really figuring out the cost of the monitoring, because, we've got this, and it's kind of becomes a slush fund or whatever that's left over from the processing fee. I think, I don't know. I guess I can't really articulate why, but it doesn't make me.
But wouldn't that cost allocate the staff time and the whatever else time or other costs, and so there wouldn't.
We can cost
we may find out that it's costing us more than what's going into it too. That's the other, side of it. It could be.
So one of the options is, let's say we do end up doing in-house monitoring, we could cost that person's time against the fund. Just we would have to show that that's what the use was, is that it was used towards that end.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically what we do is we create an account. Obviously, an account would be created, and then when we submit our time, if we worked on a project, it would go against that project code, and then that way we're able to actually draw down from that specific pot of funds to pay for the program costs. So we're able to track our time spent and the money allocated for a certain project. And we can see whether or not we're doing full cost recovery or having to subsidize ourselves, which could administration our project.
And then we could adjust the monitoring fee in the future as necessary, because that will be an ongoing.
So in our cost allocations, do we also do the same for supply costs and that type of thing? Do they get allocated to the projects?
Yes,
and the type of
in
things?
The master fee schedule, I have a per hour rate, and includes
I don't mean
overhead.
Just staff time. I mean, and it includes overhead. Gotcha. Okay.
And it includes insurance, everything that it costs for me to be here an hour. And benefits, and it's the same for
but also the supplies of actually
the overhead costs. Yes. It even includes our rent over at JCB for instance.
Copies and paper and ink and okay. That's important.
That's the per hour amount. It isn't our actual per hour. It's the per hour with overhead and.
So am I hearing that everybody's okay with this fee schedule, and that we just think we should?
We just need to revisit it.
Have a special account code set up for it.
We can set up a special GL code. That's not a problem. And then we're also going to be back here in 6 months, because that's when we'll be doing the budget again. So you'll see this again, and we'll have another dialogue if it looks like we have any concerns. This one's a lot easier for us to address than the others.
Okay.
Does that work?
Okay.
Yep.
And we'll just be sure that in our programming materials that we indicate that the fees are subject to change annually per the master fee schedule, just to make sure that people are not blindsided by that particular.
Right.
Makes sense.
Right. Okay.
So before we proceed, what would be really helpful, I don't think there's any other slides, are there, Amy?
I have the decision slide.
Perfect. So we're going to want to make sure that as we go through the decisions that we know what changes were made tonight. So the language around the green building component just needs to be called out.
Well, that's why, I mean, we're going to have her flip slides. Would have been nice to have a printed copy.
Well, in the motion, all we need to say is as amended by staff.
Is that going to be enough?
Tonight?
We should, I'd like to, just for clarity, and to assure that we meet your stipulations, make sure that even if it's not in the motion, we walk through what those changes are so that Scott can capture them.
Right.
Yeah, the requirement is that it be read, so we should go through each of these that's going to be changed and read the sentence that's going to be changed.
Did we change anything that wasn't already changed by staff?
Anything that's different than the proposed published ordinance.
Well, so there are several things.
Those changes.
Okay.
Those changes, plus there was one more, right? There was one more on the
We have one more?
green building certification.
Yeah, it was the language around the energy efficiency and making sure that it was consistent.
Right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, on number 8.
Number 8, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. So that it reads the same.
So who wants to do that? Is staff doing that, or is the counselor doing
Yes,
that?
we are doing that
Okay.
for you. And actually, if you'd like, I will even do it, unless Amy wants to. You guys got it? Okay. So the proposal tonight is that you adopt the ordinance as outlined, and the sections that we are proposing that you change are in 3.65.090D. Yes.
This is change number 5. Do we want to?
Change number 5? Would it help you just to know?
Well, I'm not going to write them down verbatim, but is there one?
Those
It's
were made
number
in
5.
ordinance. The yellow ones are the only ones that are unique to tonight that were not published. So I think we're okay otherwise.
There's 1 through 10 or something, but not all of them
But
are
not
going to be
everything got
changes.
Only the yellow ones are the ones I'm going to worry about, except for the second one on the next page. So 3.65.090.d, and we're amending what we had published from 2. All new buildings or major rehabilitations as certified projects of the city are required to meet a green building certification level and associated energy use standards set within the Milwaukee Municipal Code Title 19 based on the date of land use approval. The second change that was not an ordinance is at 3.65.120B, and we're changing to the requesting of project documentation, including but not limited to current rents on the annual basis and lease agreements with redacted personnel information. And would you go to the next one? Thanks, Amy. And then on number 8. So 3.65.120C, section C, that is going to be changed to if fails to meet the green building certification level outlined in Milwaukee Municipal Code section
Title.
Title 19. Thank you. So those were the 3.
And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. I thought there were more than that. No. Okay. All right. So, other discussion? Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll do so.
Well, before we make a
Okay.
motion, can we discuss as far as?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to give I want to say, first of all, thanks to the staff. If this is the appropriate time to do it, but I do want to, maybe if you want to vote first and then we can say our things.
Well, we've just had the changes read, so we should probably vote.
Yeah, we should probably vote.
Get our motion out there and get our vote
You want to
in.
make the motion?
And then we can have
Sure.
I'll second for you. Okay, go ahead.
Let me find it.
Right here.
Page 7 of 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
I move for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance adopting Chapter 3.65 Vertical Housing Development Zone Program for the purpose of encouraging development of mixed-use residential projects within the zone boundary, adopting local sustainability criteria, and adopting a sunset provision for the development zone, with the amendments noted by staff that were in the ordinance and track changes and as those discussed by City Manager Ann Ober a moment ago.
I'll second.
It has been moved and seconded for the first and second readings by title only and adoption of the ordinance adopting Chapter 3.65 Vertical Housing Development Zone Program for the purpose of encouraging development of mixed-use residential projects within the zone boundary, adopting local sustainability criteria, and adopting a sunset provision for the development zone with the amendments noted by staff in the redlined version in our packet and additional changes as annotated by, or as read by City Manager Ober. Is any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no.
We have to do this one separate.
Ms. Ober, would you read the ordinance 2 times by title only?
Yes. An ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon adopting Chapter 3.65 Vertical Housing Development Zone Program for the purpose of encouraging development of mixed-use residential projects within the zone boundary, adopting local sustainability criteria, and adopting a sunset provision for the development zone with the amendments noted by staff made in the ordinance online in the red line version and as were outlined by me previously. Again, an ordinance of the City of Milwaukee, Oregon, adopting Chapter 3.65 Vertical Housing Development Zone Program for the purpose of encouraging development of mixed-use residential projects within the zone boundary, adopting local sustainability criteria, and adopting a sunset provision for the development zone with the amendments noted by staff in the red line copy online and also by me in the listing of tonight's changes.
All right, Mr. Stauffer, would you please poll the council?
Councilor Falconer?
Aye.
Council President Beatty?
Aye.
Councilor Parks?
Aye.
Councilor Abba?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0, ordinance 2157.
All right. And then we also have the separate fee resolution. So I need another motion on that.
I'll move to approve the resolution establishing fees for the Vertical Housing Development Zone Program.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution establishing fees for the Vertical Housing Development Zone Program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. Passes unanimously. Okay.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank staff for doing a great job, and I know it's hard and we're under a time crunch, and so appreciate that. But also, I want to say about the program itself, I think it's a very necessary program. We need incentives for at least one project to come in here and have a shovel in a ground that creates housing. And it's interesting that tonight this should be on the agenda, as well as our housing emergency issue. Councilor Collette brought in this thing that highlights the housing need. So it's not just affordable housing, which is important, but housing stock in general. And I think we have some good opportunities here to add a lot of housing, but sometimes government needs to give a little bit of an incentive and push. And this is really important. Not only we're giving up some money on tax abatement, but when you bring in that kind of development in downtown, just the increase in population, the businesses, it's an economic factor too, and it helps all the businesses downtown, and it helps the city, and that increases our income overall. So this is a real important program, I think, and I'm glad that we passed it, and I hope that we continue to set standards that are attainable so that people can come in and develop as necessary smart growth, and I supported it very much, and I'm glad that we passed it tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see lots of nodding around and concurrence with that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that we are still considered a sort of an untested market, and so this and the fact that we put a sunset on this program to reconsider it, in future, I think that whoever suggested it, I think it was probably you. Very much appreciated, and I think that I think our staff has done a tremendous job in sort of helping us learn what some of the tools are available to us to make some projects actually happen and happen now. So
yeah.
Thanks.
Agreed.
I agree. Thank you, ladies. Good job. Good job.
I think we're the first city to approve one now.
We are,
Everybody's
actually.
waiting.
Wow.
Fantastic.
We're the second to have a CET and the first to have, wow. Alma's going to be invited everywhere to speak on everything.
No more sabbaticals.
Yeah, you don't get any more vacation.
I don't know. It sounds like, really, you came back energized and
Committed. So we're going into executive tonight, but I think that we have, if you wanted to go through the calendar before.
Yeah, I have a few council reports, and I don't know if other people have council reports, but I'll read the script that I have before we go into executive session. Bighorn Brass Band, the Northwest Premier Brass Band, will play at Milwaukee High School on Friday, December 8th at 7 p.m. Tickets are $15 for adults and $10 for students and honored citizens over age 60. I think that's an annual Christmas thing that their band, it's like a fundraiser for the high school band department is my recollection about that. Leaf drops, the two days left to drop your leaves at the Public Works Yard at 6101 Southeast Johnson Creek Boulevard. There's been 5 dates, but there's only 2 left the next 2 Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Please bring your utility bill as proof of residency in the city. The Milwaukee Center's Winter Celebrations event takes place this Saturday from 9:30 a.m. to noon. Treat yourself to the hot chocolate bar, make a memory with the photo booth, and enjoy holiday songs from Portland Chamber Music. The Milwaukee Center is located at 5440 Southeast Kellogg Creek Drive. And I will note, I've seen some online stuff about the winter celebrations, and I mean, the Milwaukee Center is a senior center, but this is actually a very family-friendly event. There are lots of kids' activities in this event, too. The Milwaukee Museum's annual Christmas event takes place on Saturday, December 16th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Enjoy seasonal decorations, holiday treats, live music, and pictures with Santa. The museum is located at 3737 Southeast Adams. I'll note that that's 11 to 3 on the 16th, and then starting at 4:30 on the 16th, come down to the riverfront for the Winter Solstice and Christmas Ships viewing event. We had the Christmas Ships people here earlier tonight. Oh, in fact, this is my cue to hold up my flyer again, or Layla's flyer, actually, that calls out all the businesses that are open late to serve you during the Christmas ship visits to downtown Milwaukee. December 16th, or the solstice event goes from 4:30 to 7:30 on that Saturday. That's the only day the combined both Willamette and Columbia fleets come to Milwaukee Bay Park, so it is the best evening to view the Christmas ships. You'll see the biggest number of ships, but the ships actually come 6 times, so you can also come down another evening. We'll have even more tenting this year to keep you dry at the event. The bonfire will burn hot again this year, along with 5 smaller fires throughout the park. The Llewellyn NDA will once again be selling food, hot cocoa, and coffee as their annual fundraiser, and the beer store will also host a beer garden again this year. And then, as I just said, the Christmas ships also come 5 other times in December, starting tomorrow. They come the 6th and the 8th, so Wednesday and Friday this week, and then next week, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and then also on the 20th, which is well, anyway, on the 20th, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Can you read those dates? Because
Okay, December 6, 8, 13, 15, and 20. And it's also on the city's website. It's also on the Celebrate Milwaukee Inc. website. Visit Milwaukee's homepage at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov to learn about all of these December events and activities. I do note that the city manager did some magic and got our Christmas tree lit.
Totally lit. I actually don't get any credit, but I'll tell you that the fire department does, because they brought the ladder truck over and they had it set up so we could actually have the firefighters walk out there, figure out which plug was broken, we fixed it, and it's all working great.
Well, I think all of us were there, but the umbrella parade and tree lighting were a big success and big crowd and a lot of people having fun. And
yes,
it was really a good event. Yeah. Other things, meetings or things anybody else needs to report on? You sent us some note about the Kellogg Good Neighbor, and I see they're on our agenda for next week, right?
It's next week. They're giving their update and what's going on. We're having some construction that will go on at the plant, and we've been working on the landscaping and all kinds of issues that they'll talk to you about, but I think we're making some progress.
Well, I would mention to people who are interested in just general updates, we get this thing called the Community Development Director's Report, and it was in our agenda packet for the work session. So if you want to know what's going on with 42nd Avenue, or what's that construction down on the river, that's a great resource to go look at and see what the status is of a very long list of projects around town. And so it's a good way to check up on things. And I will say, as the pile driving for the new bridge on the river has been not quiet, but hopefully it's proceeding apace, and we'll have all the piles driven in the next week.
The great weather has also given us a window for 42nd Avenue. So for people who are wondering what's going on there, our hope is that with 7 days of clear weather, we should be a lot further along, if not done. So we're working diligently to try and finish up that project.
Great. Good deal.
Yeah. Anything else? Nope. All right, well then we are going into executive session. So I have a little script I need to read. Upon adjournment of the regular session, council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 192-660, subsection 2H, to consult with counsel regarding legal rights and duties regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. So with that, we don't do a motion to adjourn because we're not actually adjourning. So with that, we will sign off.
You want to adjourn the regular session?
Okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular session.
I would so move.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the regular session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None heard. The regular session is adjourned.